Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Determinate Content. Today we have with us Simon Evnine, who is professor of philosophy at the University of Miami, and he's the author of several books and articles, including Making Objects and Events, A Hylomorphic Theory of Artifacts, Actions and Organisms, Epistemic Dimensions of Personhood, and Donald Davidson, not the person, but a book entitled Donald Davidson. And today we will be discussing philosophy and meme culture in relation to his most recent book, A Certain Gesture, Evnine's Batman meme project and its Parerga. So to start off, I would first like to ask you to maybe introduce yourself in more depth and also kind of say something about how you got into philosophy and why it's a worthwhile pursuit, if you have any thoughts about that.
Yes. So my name is Simon Evnine, as Orca just said, and I've been teaching philosophy at the University of Miami for about 22 years now, and before that in California for a number of years. If you can identify my accent, you'll know that I'm originally from the UK, although I've been living in the US for a long time. The story of how I came to philosophy, it was a rather sort of a happy chance. My first degree in London was in music, and I had sort of ideas about becoming either a musicologist or a composer. And as soon as I got to university there, I realized I'd made a terrible mistake and that I didn't really have any aptitude for music. But the English system is one where you just study one subject for 3 years. And so I wasn't taking other classes. And so I just stuck it out because I didn't know what else to do. And it was only towards the end of that I began to realize that the things I'd been trying to make the music degree do for me were answering questions in aesthetics. And that was part of a whole branch of study, philosophy, which I hadn't really been conscious of until then. But I took some advice, and it turned out that there was an MA program in London that you could enroll in without having done a BA in philosophy. So I did that, and that's when I made the switch. And then I did more graduate study in London for a while, and then came to the US to do a PhD at UCLA. So since that time, I've been solidly in philosophy.
Right. And why do you think it is worth asking those sort of questions that you were prompted to do?
Yeah, you're catching me in a somewhat pessimistic phase of my existence, and so a glib but not altogether inauthentic answer might be there isn't really any point.
Yeah.
You gave me the question an hour ago,
yeah,
and I've been spending that time thinking about it, and I do have something a bit more constructive to say about that, I think. So as I thought about it, I thought really, if you think about the different disciplines within the humanities, not so much the sciences, but in the humanities, what gets included in them at any one time is very contingent and path dependent as to how we got here. And so philosophy isn't really like a natural kind at all. And I think that means that there isn't going to be a single answer as to why philosophy is worth doing.
Right.
That would apply to all different points in history, all different areas in philosophy, all different aspects of it. So in analytic philosophy, one justification that's often given is that it's a kind of mental hygiene, and we're helping people think more clearly, and that ultimately will be a kind of public good if people are thinking clearly and precisely. And, that is a benefit of doing analytic philosophy. I think there's no doubt about that. But of course, that doesn't apply to all philosophy. And there are some kinds of philosophy where it's less than intellectual hygiene. It's more like intellectual playing in the mud or something. And those are, that's not to denigrate any philosophy that you might describe that way, but it's just a different part of philosophy, and there are different reasons for doing that. And then if you think about philosophy as a way of life, there's that book by Parerga called Philosophy as a Way of Life, about ancient philosophy and how it was a kind of spiritual practice. I guess the reasons for doing that would be quite different again. So I don't think there's going to be a single answer for why philosophy is worth doing. It is good, at least analytic philosophy is kind of good mental hygiene. I think that a lot of the questions that philosophers at all times have asked are continuous with things that people ask in their ordinary lives. I don't think it's a distinct area of activity. So it's something that we come to naturally. And I think a lot of people who do take the study of philosophy further than just everyday reflection probably do it just because it suits their temperament, that they just, that's what comes to them naturally. I feel that's my case very much.
Right. I think that at least the first part of the answer is a good segue into the book. So just to introduce the book for everyone. So I have it here on Kindle, Amazon Kindle, which you go and buy. But it's a collection of Batman slapping Robin memes with various captions made by you, Simon Evnine, and published on your Facebook. And then there's a commentary upon all of the, I'm not sure if you can actually see this, but yeah, it's there's commentary on those memes relating to philosophy, psychoanalysis, feminist theory, metaphysics, all sorts of topics. And so I wanted to first start off by asking, because you've gestured before in one of your talks on this, that you're not sure that the book has a point, or these memes do in fact have a point. But nevertheless, is there anything you'd like to sort of convey or illustrate with the book, do you think?
Good. Well, perhaps I can also use this as an opportunity to talk about how the book came to be.
Yes.
Bound up with answering your question. So, for reasons that were not clear to me at the time, whenever I used to see people posting memes using that image of Batman slapping Robin, I got a real kick out of it. I don't know. I didn't know why. I do know why now. But it was it always gave me a little kind of jolt of pleasure in some way, regardless of what the caption was. And at some point in 2016, I realized that one can make memes oneself. I was obviously very new to all that technology at that point. But I sort of worked out that there are these websites where you can go and just insert the text and it produces the image with the text in the right place. And so I made a couple which appear as the first two memes in the book and put them on Facebook. And then I didn't really think about doing anything more, but over the next month or so, I kept getting more and more ideas for memes that I wanted to make that way. So about a month later, I started producing a lot of them and posting them almost every day for a while. And then I guess I kind of thought maybe I'd reached the end of it, and I announced that the whole thing would come to an end with this little movie that I made using the images. And so that provided a kind of suitable climax for that whole Facebook phase of the thing. And I'd started referring to it as my Batman meme project. And I realized I was making a lot of the memes were quite esoteric. They were referring to all sorts of things that many people had no idea about. And I wasn't explaining anything. And I sort of began to toy with the idea of, well, when I finished, I'll just get them all together and explain what the esoteric references were. So that was the origin of the book. But then, you know, that was 7 years ago. And I've just published the first volume of it. Half of the memes I want to comment on. So obviously it took off and became a much bigger project, and it took on metaphilosophical implications. The image itself and making the memes with it and then writing about them became an important element in my own psychoanalysis. And so that's when I began to understand that what the image was doing for me was encapsulating an internal sadomasochistic dynamic about how I felt about my former self, childish self. So it was the adult in me responding to the child in me. And there
by slapping him.
Yes, exactly. Obviously a lot of, you know, personal stuff around that I won't go into now, but roughly speaking, it had to do with lack of acceptance of my childish self. And so it became bound up with the analysis, and the book itself came to feel like an extension of the analysis, as well as containing reflections on the process of analysis, along with reflections on a lot of these other issues that were important to me. And I gradually came to see that the book was it was pulling against the methodologies of contemporary philosophy, right? Which seek for a single authorial voice that presents material sort of clearly and without any deceit or and with a kind of unity to it. And that what I was trying to do was think about doing philosophy, but where the authorial voice is fractured. So there's the person who's making the memes and the person who's commenting on them, even though it's me in both cases. So there's a duality in the voice. There's a lack of continuity. There's not the kind of totalizing effect of the point of this article is such and such, where everything has to be finalized towards that goal. And so I was sort of exploring.
Yeah. I mean, that's very much how I sort of came into the book, and the way sort of because I know you've obviously done a lot of very good work in analytic philosophy, precisely using that methodology. And I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, like, do you think what has led you towards this is it kind of boredom with that format, or do you think that there's a kind of epistemological problem in some way with such ways of formulating philosophical ideas? Or, is there, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, boredom is an element. I'm 62 now, and I've been doing analytic philosophy since I was, I don't know, 24 or something. And I've written a lot of books, and I've written articles and stuff. And so I'm familiar with that. So there is a sense of just like wanting something new. But there are also deeper issues. I don't think there's anything improper about doing philosophy in that way. It's good, and a lot of it is very interesting. But particularly because of, so another element in the whole book has to do with professionalization. And the way I felt I fitted into the philosophy profession. And there are certain features now of the discipline that I don't think are good. Like, there's an enormous pressure to publish. It makes an enormous generation of material that more and more
artifacts.
They're these sort of weird, very, very narrowly defined artifacts. The journal article. And a lot of that, it's fine, it's good, but it's just, it doesn't hold my attention anymore in the way that it used to. And so it is partly just for personal reasons, wanting to do something new, do something that feels more exciting, to me at any rate.
Right. No, I definitely, I agree with that completely. And that's one of the reasons why I found this book to be very interesting, is that when you go into a lot of analytic philosophers' websites and CVs, and it's all kind of very, it's all clean, and it all consists of exactly the same stuff. But this looks like this kind of brings in something new, I think. But I wanted to ask another question. So, like, in the title, a certain gesture, it's taken from G. Moore's lecture, or famous Proof of an External World. And I wanted to ask you, so this this question, maybe it's a weird question, but I was wondering, do you think the strength of Moore's proof would have been stronger if he'd slapped one of the members of his audience instead of merely kind of waving his hands around?
That's a great question, and I had never thought about that. Do I think it would have been stronger? I'd love to say yes, but I don't suppose it would have been. Though, I mean, there is the Samuel Johnson's refutation of Barclay when he kicks
Yeah.
the stone.
Yeah.
As I refute him thus, there is something more like the slap there in kicking the stone.
Yeah.
And it's the creation of the sensation in the receiver, the pain. So perhaps it would have been a bit stronger. I don't know. I wish he had done now.
Yeah, well, I guess the reason why I ask is because it seems like maybe, I don't know if I'm interpreting you correctly, but maybe it seems like there's some kind of criticism towards the form of philosophy when it puts out these kind of premises and so on. It kind of excludes various details and contextualized features of when we put forth philosophy, the culture in which it's stated and so on. And it seems like your book, in being so against that, might also want to bring back those kind of contextualized features into philosophy. Is that so that, for example, when Moore says when you make a certain gesture with your hand, it's not just to be taken that sort of any gesture in the formal argument might be sufficient to prove the existence of an external world, but that it matters, like the way that it's that is done. Is that?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think that's a kind of a? Is that the way you're going, or are you not kind of putting forward any kind of critique against philosophy? Analytic philosophy is like,
Okay, that's a great question, I think, and I'm not sure how closely it relates to the Moore example, but I think you've got something that's important nonetheless. So, and this picks up on the whole strain of auto theory in the book. So, for a while now, feminist philosophers have been arguing for the importance. They've seen that traditional philosophical norms of abstraction have served to exclude certain people from philosophy, or certain types of considerations from being considered as philosophical, and they've tried to reinscribe the person and the body into philosophy. And I was influenced by that, and I was thinking of this as what I've sometimes called enacted philosophy. So you're taking it a step further when you see the slap itself as enacting something, say, in the role of refuting skepticism. But it is very much, I mean, I talk a lot about myself in the book. I connect philosophical questions with my own experience, and all of that's something that is alien to analytic philosophy as it's practiced. It isn't alien to all areas now of intellectual inquiry, because of this sort of movement started by feminist philosophers and taken up by other philosophers who work on the basis of identity considerations. And I think that that's very interesting. And I think, to some extent, that's probably penetrated into what we call continental philosophy, for want of a better word. But I don't think anyone in analytic philosophy has taken up that challenge. So I think I am sort of treading some new ground there and trying to reincorporate the person, the context, the situation into the more abstract language of analytic philosophy.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because I think it relates to like another question I had about like meme culture in general, and I guess it must have started maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. There's been like huge blow up of philosophy memes on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and so on. And I guess there are kind of two approaches to seeing what they do. Like, one is just to think of them as pedagogical tools for illustrating various philosophical ideas. So they're kind of an invitation to engage with already existing propositions in philosophy. And then there's another kind of view in which they introduce something new, which cannot be stated in the previous language. So like you distinguish between doing philosophy through memes and putting philosophy in memes, which may be. And I think I was thinking about this beforehand, but I definitely seems to me that there are quite a lot of memes that go beyond just the just putting in propositions from philosophy in the in the images or GIFs and videos and so on. Like, and do you think there are examples of those memes? What could they be like? Memes that really take like the expressive power of philosophy further, merely than just kind of copying the already existing content in a new medium.
Yeah, good. It's another great question, and something that I am thinking a lot about now. So you alluded to the paper that I wrote called Philosophy Through Memes.
Right.
And I think maybe I'd make a threefold distinction here. So that one thing is putting philosophy in memes. So I think that that's really what you get with all the trolley problem memes, for example. You could, I mean, they're very clever and I like them a lot, but you could pretty much, when they're not just funny, you could say what it is that they're adding to the initial trolley problem. So you know, I illustrated it in that paper with the American chopper argument using text from a Plato dialogue. Yeah. So there, it's the real philosophy is just what the dialogue is, and the meme part is just kind of a funny addition to it. Yeah. Then the next level, if you like, or the next element of this threefold distinction would be where an individual meme used its expressive powers to convey something that couldn't be said in a series of propositions.
Right.
And I'm not sure if there are examples of that. I would very much like there to be. And, you know, if you have thoughts on this, I'd love to hear them. But then the third element, and this is the other thing that I talk about in that paper, Philosophy Through Memes, is that the activity of meme culture as a whole might be doing something philosophical. So it wouldn't be down to the individual memes to perform any philosophical task, but rather the philosophy being done would stem from features that were just common to memes and meme culture in general. So there I mention Alva Noé's work from Strange Tools, where different art forms are able to reflect back things to us about our ordinary life. But you wouldn't look to, so for example, he talks a lot about choreographed dance being a kind of embodied philosophy of movement, but you wouldn't necessarily look to an individual ballet to be doing anything philosophical. Rather, it's ballet as a whole that does it. And so I thought that memes are sort of reflecting back on us the problem of making meaning out of meaning, because they use and recycle things that are already invested in meaning. Yeah. And so, I think one of the interesting things about memes is the way you put things to work that already have meaning to make new meaning. But it's that middle category that I think you were asking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And that I'm the most puzzled about.
Yeah. So I have an example here, which I think may be useful. I'm not sure what you agree. So this is like the distracted boyfriend, but there's nothing written in it.
Okay.
And so I thought that because I wrote an essay about this in a kind of a journal on critical meme theory, and I use this like example as one wherein like the form is laid out, like the form of the medium of language is kind of laid out completely, like maybe akin to kind of the sort of propositional structure in Wittgenstein, like that which cannot be sort of stated but only shown. But it's very hard to come up with an example of a meme that would really kind of go beyond the expressive powers of language. But I don't know if that is an example of one.
It's a very interesting example. And I don't know if you've got a chance to look at my movie based on the distracted boyfriend.
Yeah, no, I have, yeah.
So one of the versions of the distracted boyfriend meme that I use is a bit like what you've shown me there. So it's just a propositional description of the abstract relations.
Yeah.
So, you know, for three elements, one, I can't remember now how abstract I made it, whether it was like one desires something about the other, and you know, the third, whatever, or if it was even more abstract than that. But that was an attempt in a way to describe the structure in which the texts are embedded.
Yeah. But Yeah, I mean, because I guess what I'm interested in is like, is kind of, I mean, I guess it's kind of about the, I mean, I guess it's not new in philosophy to try to use non-propositional forms to elucidate philosophical point and try to give.
Yeah.
So I guess um, maybe there was this anecdote about the skeptics. Maybe I'm wrong here on the history, but that the like ancient skeptics used to go up and introduce a philosophical use a philosophical argument to kind of demonstrate a certain thesis, and then everyone's convinced by that, and then go back again and then argue for the precise opposite thesis, so that everyone were completely convinced by that thesis. And then instead of saying that we cannot have knowledge because they're it's equally good evidence for both sides, they kind of showed it by means of this.
Yes.
And I guess I'm kind of interested in whether memes are they something new on that front, or is it the same problem rehashed again? Maybe that they give a way of doing philosophy that's not as rhetoric or something.
Yes. Well, I mean, most memes take the form of images.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
they'll offer
that's
the same
true.
possibilities as images. If you just look at an instance, or you look at the schema itself, like the blanking. But what's new about memes is the kind of way in which they're reproduced and spread, and the culture that they're part of. But I think your question about images is already a good one, and people do write about that. There's a new book by Thomas Wartenberg, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet, about the role of images as illustration in philosophy. I think you and I are both imagining they might do something more than illustrate. But what that more is what remains to be said. And like you, I feel there's something interesting out there and I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, maybe that's like the nature of the whole problem. Because if you were to put your finger on it, would be something missing.
Yes.
I'm just thinking of there was an article recently published in Metaphilosophy, I think, called "Can a good philosophical contribution be made by just asking a question?" And then there was nothing. That was the whole paper.
Right.
And I thought that was like really funny and so on. But then the authors included like a very long postscript where they explained, the point behind this article. And I thought that ruined it a little bit, because what the point that they were trying to make was that you don't need the additional propositions in order to make a philosophical observation or something. So it's really tricky, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's being ruined there because they're publishing it as a journal article.
Yeah.
So the conventions of journal articles require that you say what your point is. And so you can't do the purely sort of performance thing of asking the question like that and leaving it.
So you don't have any plans that the part 2 of this book will be published by Oxford University Press or something similar?
Oh, I'd love it if they did. I tried to publish part 1, but they didn't want
really?
it.
Oh,
yeah. I approached a number of academic publishers and nobody was interested.
No, that'd be great. That would be really good. Okay, so I guess what I would like to ask you more about is maybe like the metaphysics of memes, like relating to your other work on organisms and artifacts. So, I mean, there was one meme that I thought about, which might tie on to the one I showed you, which is meme 60 in the book, the sound of one hand slapping, which is not included in the book. There's no commentary on it, but it is included in the meme project. But this is a picture of Batman slapping Robin, but there's no text in any of the speech bubbles. And then in the commentary, it is claimed, and might be by you, might be by someone else, we don't know, that that the meme maker of this kind of makes this into a meme by merely imposing the concept of a meme upon the picture, much in the same way that someone might make a chair out of like a tree stump, which already has the same material, qualitatively identical material base as like a chair, but is not a chair until the concept is kind of imposed upon it. And I guess because you have done a lot of work on that sort of stuff in general, but I was wondering, like, do you think that the virtual domain causes any, like, does it cause any kind of new problems for understanding how sort of bringing objects into its existence works? Because I mean, if you're looking at like a tree stump, that's a material object from the start, whereas a meme might, I mean, sure, you can say that it's like pixels, but it's already kind of, it's in a vast network of internet stuff, whatever that might be. So do you think that there are any kind of novel problems in articulating like an ontology of memes and how they come to be in virtue of our cognitive contributions? So
good, thank you. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what to answer to that question. So, I mean, just to go a couple of steps back, fill in your listeners about this. So there's an existing discussion within ordinary object metaphysics about whether you can make something just by saying or thinking of something in a particular way. So one of the stock examples is the urinal that Duchamp presented as a work of art. So has he made something new just by taking that object? Other examples include whether you can make a table, a new object, simply by bringing a piece of driftwood into your home. So those are the kinds of examples that get discussed, and depending on your view of the nature of such objects, you might want to say different things about that. My own take has been that artifacts are essentially the products of human creation. So if there's a table, if you can make a table by bringing a piece of driftwood into your house, then there's something that's been created by you that wasn't there before, namely the driftwood. So on my view, what happens is that a maker imposes a concept onto some material. And in the normal course of events, that requires physical manipulation of the material. So the carpenter imposes the concept of table onto some wood by hammering and sawing and screwing things together. But in a few fortuitous cases, the raw material doesn't need anything else done to it. So the only work that's involved is the imposition of the concept. And that brings into existence an object that's a distinct object from the matter. So making a piece of driftwood into a table means making a new object, a table that has the piece of driftwood as its matter. And then that's the relation between, the statue and the clay, but now established between the table and the piece of driftwood. In this case, you didn't need to do anything to the matter because it was already in the right shape. So that's the state of play with regard to material objects. Now, I also think, and a number of other people think this too, that people can make abstract artifacts. So if you think about symphonies and novels and poems and things like that, these are not to be identified with the copies or the performances. They're something abstract. But I think they can be described in a similar way to the way in which the driftwood case is described. So, for example, for a symphony, there's a sound structure, which, like the Platonists, I think is a sort of eternal abstract object. But what the composer does is like what the sculptor does in carving away the stuff from around the finished statue. They isolate one particular sound structure from all the neighboring ones. And they do that by typically writing a score. So the score is a way of indicating the sound structure, and the composition is a work that's made out of the sound structure that has the sound structure as its matter. So it's not Platonism, because Platonism identifies the composition with the sound structure. This is really a version of Jerry Levinson's view about musical works as indicated structures. So for me, the composer's work involves indicating the structure, and that brings into existence a new kind of object, an indicated structure.
So in the realm of memes, would the case be that there are these memes that we can indicate towards, and in making memes, we kind of pick out one of these abstract structures, which kind of which is instantiated in the image or the GIF or something like that.
Yes, I mean, it gets complicated with memes in a way that it doesn't with the symphonies because of the reproducibility of the image now. So yes, one thing is you could just think of a meme as a sort of structure created by an image and some words, say, just to talk about image macro.
Yeah.
So there's the Batman slapping Robin image. There's an infinite number of different combinations of words that could go there. So those all exist, you know, in the realm of Platonic abstracta. And then the meme maker indicates one of them and makes a meme out of it. But there's also, like in the meme in my book that you point to, there's just the image itself. And that too could be indicated. So there would be a meme made out of the image.
Yeah.
Which would be visually indiscernible from it.
Yes. Right.
But yes, so I think that point about abstract artifacts applies in the case of memes, but then I'm also concerned, and I don't understand this well enough, that that the reproducibility of the image in some way makes it even a higher level abstraction.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you because a key concept in your work is like metabolism, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it seems that and yeah, would you just like to explain that concept before I?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So in the case of organisms and artifacts as well, I think that the fact that the object is made out of the matter offers the possibility that the object can endure while the matter changes.
Yeah.
And that's what typically happens with an organism. We have a metabolism in the narrow sense that, you know, our cells are changing all the time. It also is the case with artifacts. That's the point of the ship of Theseus example.
Yes.
The ship is exhibiting its metabolism as it absorbs and then rejects new matter. And I think even with abstract objects, even if they can't necessarily change their matter over time, they can change them with respect to modal space. So a given novel could have had a different structure of words or whatever the matter is, or a given symphony could have had a different sound structure. The same symphony could have had a different structure if Mozart had added clarinets to the Jupiter Symphony, right? It would have had a different sound structure. He didn't, but you know, it's got the ability to vary across modal space.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but there's something about, maybe I'm wrong here, but there's something about the metabolism of memes that make them so kind of extremely modally open, or if you will, or like have extremely vague identity conditions that it seems like it's a new case in some ways. Like, I don't know, like if you were to take a symphony and then, well, just replace it with empty, like replace it with nothing, like no sound, like maybe no one would say that's the same, you know, that's an instance of that very symphony. But with memes, like it seems that even that could be possible. Like if you were to put in this book like just a blank slate, like nothing, and say this is one of the memes, then I mean, I don't know, I'm inclined to say that it could be one of the Batman slapping Robin memes, precisely in virtue of that. So maybe it's like art, or you know, do you think that they can? Do you think that memes are problematic in that way ontologically, or do you think they can be? Yeah,
you've raised a really interesting thought here. I think that so the way I was just talking now, I imagine that that the meme is the combination of the image, say, in the word. Particular words.
Yeah.
So it would have the image as part of its matter and the words as part of its matter. But you've raised the possibility of inverting that. So the meme, so the words stand to the meme as the matter does to the to the finished object.
Right.
Wait, am I inverting it or not? No.
Because
now it seems to me that you're suggesting that there's a single object whose metabolism is displayed in the many different uses that people make of it. And I was thinking of the many different uses of it as each a different thing made out of some common material. So I think you've raised an interesting possibility here that all the individual things that people post are like the cells of the meme, and they're kind of replacing each other and jostling with each other.
Yeah,
to constitute the meme at any one time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the right way to look at, whether to look at it from which way to look at it, but there's certainly a malleability and a kind of flexibility with memes that.
Yes.
Well, I mean, would you say that they're akin to artworks in that, or kind of very super ultra modern sort of postmodern art in that way that it's.
Yeah, I guess I don't think that artworks are an ontological kind. Really.
Okay.
I mean, so I don't mind according memes the status of art.
Yeah.
But memes are just what they are, and symphonies are what they are.
Yeah.
And art is really an honorific title, I think, not an ontological.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Maybe I should rephrase it. So it's not. I mean, do you think that do you think that memes can compose objects, like? Or
yes.
Yeah,
right. I think they are objects.
They are objects, right?
Objects.
Okay, well then the question is, like, do you think that these objects are akin or similar in status to?
Yes.
artworks?
Well, I mean, that's what I think your question from a moment ago is making me think about now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to say.
Yeah.
Where the object is. I mean, if it's the particular image with a particular text that's the object we should be focused on and asking about its matter, or if there's some other object and the combination of text and image are the matter of that other object.
Yeah. Wow, these are really, really difficult questions.
I think it's an exciting idea that you've hit on there.
Maybe it's an article in an academic journal.
Absolutely.
So I guess, I wanted to ask more about, maybe this is a tangential question, but more about like virtual objects in general. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about like David Chalmers' new book, which says that virtual reality is as real as physical reality in the kind of colloquial sense of physical reality. Do you think that, I mean, given that we're moving more and more towards kind of digital immersion with our phones, but then maybe in the future kind of augmented reality and virtual reality, and maybe we'll have memes sort of literally in our perceptual framework all the time. Do you think that is kind of a diminishing of reality as opposed to right now, or is it kind of ontologically on a par in some way?
Yeah, I don't think I have any worked out views about that. I mean, in some way, my gut just says no, it's diminished.
Yeah,
in some way, it's really the same.
Yeah,
but I'm not attached to that. I could be persuaded otherwise.
Right.
Do you have any views about that?
No, I guess I have the same sort of knee-jerk reaction that there's something about memes or virtual objects in general, which kind of, I mean, I guess memes are a better example of that kind of irreality in some way, because they are often representations of other things or other states of affairs. So they kind of refer to something else. And I mean, I guess they're real, but they're real in the same way that my thoughts or, sentences are real. But, with respect to what it is they are representing, maybe there is some kind of sense in which the thoughts are less real than the things which they represent. Or,
I mean, people disagree about this.
Yes,
but,
of course. Yeah.
If you look at Limor Schiffman's book on memes, Memes and Digital Culture, I think is the title.
Mm.
She's happy to count as memes, and I sort of agree with this. Cases where the realizations of the filling in the blank sort of idea of what a meme is to things that are material. So she points to the example of the drawings Kilroy was here. So these were drawings that began, I think, in the Second World War, with a line representing the top of a wall, and then a nose and some eyes.
Yeah.
And the inscription "Kilroy was here." And so these are, physical things. They're drawings on walls or wherever, but they have the same structure as in a way. And she thinks, yes, that those are memes too. So memes don't have to be virtual.
Yeah, that's true. But then on the other hand, that refers to Kilroy in some way, in the same way that
kind
of differs.
Yes, they're still representation.
Yeah.
Although even that's not necessary, because she also talks about the example of planking. So people go somewhere and they, arrange their body.
Yes.
And that's the instance of the meme.
Yeah. Well, I guess that might be an example of embodied philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah. That's. Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is perhaps more generally how memes are to be located in like a virtual world of stuff. Because there's been a lot of work on kind of video games, ontology, and so on. And I find myself very perplexed when, I was watching this video a while back when there was a guy playing Minecraft, and then he was. I watch this video sometimes just kind of to relax the mind, but the situation he was in was that he was kind of tagging animals in his Minecraft world, and he tagged one like a dog in the Minecraft world, and then he logged off for 6 years out of that server, and then the whole story was that he was coming back to see if he could find the very same dog.
Yes.
And that, I think, it raises really, really big questions about. I think it seems that the way we individuate objects in the real world must also then be sort of more conventional and conceptual than you might think. At least for me, that's how I felt. Because if dogs in a Minecraft world can have identity conditions, then maybe why do I think that they're any less real than tables, which I also kind of tag and then come back to and say that's the very same table. I don't know. You obviously have thought a lot about this, much more than I have. So,
well, not precisely that form of the question. No.
Yeah, but identity conditions.
Yes, I understand why you're perplexed by that, and I don't have anything illuminating to say, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yes, these are interesting questions. I agree.
Yeah, and maybe memes kind of disappearing in the constant kind of flux of information in feeds, and then coming back again, the very same meme appearing again. So I think it's very kind of, it's almost like the original paradoxes with the the ship, the puzzles of identity, I guess. But
yes, I agree.
Yeah. All right, so I think we might start to kind of to wrap up the discussion, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the kind of future of analytic philosophy and publishing and this sort of stuff? Do you think we will see more of these sort of monographs among your colleagues in the future, or do you think that they will kind of remain always on the periphery of analytic philosophy? These sort of writings.
Yes, I think we will see some more. I think people. I'm not the only person who feels now a bit constricted by the sort of conventions of the production of analytic philosophy. So I think other people are also looking to find new ways of being a philosopher, if you like to put it like that.
Yeah.
But as for the future of analytic philosophy as a whole, it's very difficult to say, because things are in great flux now, and it feels like the entire academic universe is like the wheels are coming off a bit.
Yeah.
So, there are fewer and fewer full-time employed professors. There's the adjunctification, where more and more work is being done by people under more and more exploitative conditions.
Yeah.
Universities are changing drastically. They're rethinking the role for the humanities so I'm not sure and journals, we constantly hear about how hard it is to get people to review papers for journals. They're creaking under the strain that's being put on them. And it feels like something's got to give in the next 10 or 15 years, but it's not clear how that will happen. But I mean, it could be in 20 years, we don't see anything like what we've got now.
Yeah.
Because there won't be departments where people have the leisure to research and publish. Or there won't be the journals in which to publish.
Yeah.
I can't say. I mean, a lot of people have said, like, the idea of now with people's ability to put their own work online, there's much less need for journals. There'll still be some need for filtering, right? Because otherwise there'll be an infinite amount of stuff out there practically. And
memes.
And how yes, exactly. And how will you find anything? So I just don't know what things are going to look like, but it does feel like things are changing, and most changes for the worse, so things will get worse.
Yeah, I don't know, like, no, I really find this like refreshing, because as I stated before, like, I think, and especially like a lot of analytic philosophers are in very precarious situations with regards to their employment, which leads them to kind of think very narrowly about what to write.
Yes.
And like what views to espouse. So there's like, it seems like there's massive constraints on what is kind of respectable to have, what kind of views are respectable to have.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially as a kind of someone who's, thinking back and forth about whether philosophy is something worth doing. It's like, it feels sad that a discipline that is often associated with going beyond the realms of current practice has become so completely hegemonic and like and mainstream.
Yes.
But yeah,
I mean, you have to publish, so you have to write what can get published, and that means ever more conformity to what the standards are. So that restricts, as you say, the topics you can work on, the ways you can work on them, and so on.
Yeah. All right. So, well, I hope for, especially for part 2, it's going. When do you envision putting this? Will it take another 7 years, you think, or do you have already like a meme
no idea.
stash? Yeah.
No, I mean, all the memes are there, but
all the memes. So is it 100 more memes, or?
No, it's about another 55, I think.
Okay, 55.
They're all the ones are listed in the back that are not actually included in the book.
Oh, right.
So, I need to write the commentaries on them if I decide A, to do volume 2 at all, and B, if I do it in the same way as I've done volume 1.
Yeah.
Now thinking maybe like I could do something completely different for volume 2, but I don't know what that would be yet. So I think I need like 6 months or a year just to think about it a bit, and then we'll see. I mean, maybe I could write it quicker, or maybe it'll take another 7 years.
Yeah. So do you think, well, the memes you have, the 55 ones, are presumably more Batman slapping Roy memes, but do you think?
Yes, they're all the same.
They're all the same, but do you think maybe when you have kind of dealt with the subconscious sort of the positive feelings you got from that meme from the start, and you've dealt with that, do you think you will move on to new memes and make commentaries? No,
I don't have any interest in doing that.
No.
It's all been about this particular image. But I mean, you do raise another interesting issue there, which is, I said it was deeply involved in my analysis, and my analysis changed me, and that's changed my feelings about the image a lot. So I found that in a way it's come to have a lot less potency for me, the image, which is a good thing in terms of my own health, but not a good thing in terms of having an impetus to finish the work. So I'm not worrying about that. I'm just taking things one day at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's very good to hear that there's more coming. But if you're interested in reading the memes that already have commentary, the book is available online to purchase. And yes, well, thank you very much for coming on today to talk about this very interesting book.
Thank you. That was
yeah.
a really good conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.